Hey everyone, this is Tom, and this week's character is Shinok the Crucible for Justin. I had a Dragonborn week previous to this character, and I got to draw a Dragonborn character, and it was a lot of fun, and I forgot how much I loved painting scales and draconic reptilian type stuff. So I was super happy when I found it that I got to do it again immediately. Um, Even though this isn't really like a canon race or anything, he's a very pterodactyl based sort of thing rather than like the typical draconic kind of thing. But either way, it was still a fun challenge. When I was reading the description, I was like, you know, I was starting to get a bit nervous about like, is this still fantasy or not, and everything. But the more I got through it, the more it was just like, okay, yeah, this is fantasy. This counts. This is good. It's legal, so I was happy about that. I'm just moving forward with it. But anyway, I went a little bit more casual in my approach this time. I didn't do the rigorous posing and then the bones and then the muscles. I sort of did it all at once. Um, it was mostly well, two reasons. One is that it's quite a bit more organic and comfortable to do it that way, especially when coming up with the interior like structures when you're like combining something like a humanoid and a something bird-like and reptilian all at the same time with extra limbs, and it just kind of helps to just focus and put things in there and design it all up from the ground up, right at all at the same time. And plus, I had also in the week just before, or the days just before this, I did a creature at work, and I did a sort of an approach like this, and it just felt, and it was fun. It felt a bit looser and more fun, and kind of helped me get to the meat and potatoes, well, at least the meat, quite a bit sort of sooner, more easily. But I don't know if I might, we'll see how I sort of move forward along with this sort of approach. But I do like doing the skeletons and the muscles and stuff quite a lot. I think it's worth doing, and but either way, it was a fun thing. So I mean, there's still a lot of time to talk about all this sort of stuff, but with the combining of all the features and everything, it's really tough, especially when you're crossing a lot of like species kind of lines. Like you've got I've got mammalian stuff, I've got reptilian stuff, and I've got avian stuff, all kind of coming together on one sort of creature. Um, and it can be sort of a messy bit of a gong show. As far as the bird goes, I know the one thing that I wanted to include was the sternum. Uh, I've heard people a long time ago talking about how if you were to have a humanoid with wings, like a 6 foot tall kind of human, in order to have enough pectoral strength to flap the wings, they would need a sternum that was like about 7 feet long in front of their chest, which is like that big sort of keel that sticks out where all the wing flapping muscles attached to. And the arrangement on the bird is quite a bit different, like where the clavicle goes up and all the part and how the ribs sort of flow and everything's quite a bit different. It also didn't help that I had to now put on two big strong arms and two normal arms, and I just wanted to make sure that they kind of wove in and out in something that at least approached a sensible sort of manner. I did give the clavicle only just to the humanoid deltoids, and I just left the wings to the pectorals mostly. Yeah, there's some sort of crossover there, but I'm kind of happy with it. It at least looks sensible. I'd have to, like I'm sure a zoologist would probably have a lot to say about how I actually went about it and whether this is a success or not. But either way, like these sorts of puzzles are really fun to work around and to work with. The approach was good. The approach I think really helped out, especially just how kind of loose, and I could just sort of try stuff out quicker. And I mean, this isn't like a technique that I would like recommend or teach anybody. This is just me kind of drawing in a way that kind of helps get me the results I need a bit faster. And that's just, if you're getting that sort of situation, it's going to be your own personal call on about whether that's going to help you out or not. For the some of the pterodactyl-ish dinosaur-ish points, I gave him feet similarly based on a T-Rex foot, just like the previous Dragonborn character that I did. Although I gave him stumpier claws than the other one. I did this because pterodactyls were, at least most of the ones that I know of, were kind of like, they lived on cliff faces. They would climb up and then glide around. They weren't flyers in the way that like a bird or a bat is, where they can just flap and fly around. I mean, there might have been smaller ones that could, but for the most part, they were kind of more like an albatross. And so they have these short, strong, oftentimes anyway, they have these short, strong fingers that they would use for like climbing up cliffs. And hold on, I just don't want this cat in front of my microphone. He's gonna muffle everything. There we go. And so he's got these short little stumpy claws up on the top of his wings there. Those are just for like climbing up. A shorter finger has a much better time of like doing that sort of thing, like hanging off of a ledge. Long fingers are for wrapping around something. And that's sort of a different kind of arrangement for that sort of thing. And then so for the shorter toes, rather than giving him long sort of bird-like T-Rex type toes, I gave him the shorter ones just to kind of go along more with the reptile hands, like just like the short claws. It's more just climbing stuff. Just membranes and stuff's fun. It can be tricky to keep this stuff sort of on model, and I tweak it as I go through, and quite a bit there. So Justin was mentioning this one character from the Metroid games called Ridley as being one of the main sort of inspirations for it. He didn't want it to cross any sort of copyright laws or anything, so I figured, okay, you got a head that's this sort of shape with a point on the back. It's basic. I think he looks more like Sauron from the Marvel comics a bit more, but either way, if you're going to be having a humanoid pteranodon, there's gonna be people making some kind of comparisons. And the one thing that was really tough though is getting an expression on a character that doesn't really have lips. That's tough. So I abandoned it. I just wanted him to have just kind of like an alert kind of just a very just present look to his face, I guess, after at some point. Because I don't want to try to make it sound like I'm making excuses, but I mean, there's things where different species would have different ways of communicating facial expressions and things. Normally I just sort of avoid that, and just everything's just human, and a smile is a smile. Wherein, like, if you're a chimp, a smile is kind of like the opposite of a human smile, or it's like, it means I want to like rip your guts out. But the more I went along with the face, I mean, it changes over time, but as he is now at this stage, he looked too, like with his eyelid, it just looked too sultry and weird and kind of cartoony. I wanted to just go ahead and make it just more pterodactyl-ish and just, just not quite, not so much like that. Now, I do kind of regret that I don't have like a solid skeleton layer and a solid muscles layer that I could look at and show off or anything, but I think the process was helpful. At this point now, I'm just painting over a lot of the details and smoothing them out just to help make sure that I'm on model and that the forms are working. It's sort of like shrink wrapping the skin with just a little bit of fat underneath, so it's not going to be as defined as if it was before, with like no fat or skin on there. So, lots of working and reworking. Now he's got this cape. It's sort of a strange cape. It's covered in the weapons of his fallen foes. I'd imagine that in his description it was probably something a lot more impressive and large and everything, but and like long, sort of more like a train on a fancy dress. But I wanted something that he could still wear in a fight. So trying to come up with a cape on something that flies around and needs the mobility on the back. I just wanted to have it so it's something that he would wear that would actually fit him, and it wouldn't interrupt with his movements. And so I had a sort of fabric that had been twisted around, like if you've ever like grabbed your drapes and just twisted them into a sort of like a rope, and then they're just tied in a knot behind them. And then they go down and sort of drape back, open up and drape down into the cape behind him that way. It's sort of like me trying to make it look like, well, it's a way that his culture would sort of find a solution to that problem. And like a cape to his race wouldn't be the same thing as a cape to our race, but it would still be recognizable as a cape. It would still fill that kind of role. It's just a human cape would just get in the way of the wings and mess things up a bit. He is royalty. He's from this. I'm going to go over his lore a bit later on, but it's pretty out there. But he is sort of like a warlord type character, and so that's why I've given him that frill of feathers around his neck there. Something with a bit of just hinting at some of that like peacocking kind of thing. Like it's sort of like the equivalent of the white lining of a cartoon king cape with the little black tails in it, tail tips. This is plumage. Yeah, plumage is sort of like that. Almost compensating for the fact that they're super reptilian, but they're similar to the birds, but wanting to sort of live up to that kind of like flowery flamboyancy. For his chest armor here, he is a barbarian class, but for his armor, I wanted it to be flexible, because with flapping, there's a lot of movement in a lot of different ways, especially for a fighter. He's got to have really nimble arms. He's got to have really nimble arms, and not really knowing exactly all the different ways to move. It's sort of hard to kind of. Either way, anyway, so I wanted it to be something segmented and like metallic and segmented that could move around. But then I realized it would be too heavy, so that's why everything that he's wearing is full of holes, where it'll stop cuts and stabs for the most part, and it'll still work as effective armor, but it won't be as weighty, especially since it's gold. I'd imagine if it was like a lighter metal, that the holes wouldn't need to be as big, or if it's sort of like he's that great of a warrior and that strong that it doesn't really matter that it's gold. It would be another reason why gold would also be another status symbol material for another species. So yeah, I just wanted to keep it in some more like choice places where just to avoid excess weight. So there's just a little bit here and there, and it's not in too many places. It's not as wraparoundy as a lot of humans would wear. And then he has these armor down his wings, which Justin did describe being a little bit differently, but the way that I went with them is sort of it's basically just 1-to-1 jack chains, something called a jack chain, which is these. If you look it up, you'll see something that looks pretty much exactly like that, without the spikes on it. They would go down the outsides of like the shoulders and the outsides of the arms and forearms. Is just a good way to stop a lot of slashing and damaging attacks. And so I thought that would be a fitting way to sort of incorporate Justin's ideas into there. With the main joints, like those circles sort of lined up around the knuckles. I guess you'd call them knuckles on the big wing fingers. So once again, the frame, always tedious, but always so worth it. I don't remember what I was doing the other day, but I was I was trying out. One of my coworkers had a little art tablet, and I was trying it out. and it was pretty cool. It was some sort of, I think it was like a mobile version of Corel. It did a good job. It was an NVIDIA Shield tablet, I think. It had pressure sensitivity, which was neat. But anyway, I was painting this I was doing a sketch of a giant. But the thing I just kept wishing I had was the frame layer. I mean, I could have made a new layer, but I didn't realize that until I was done. But it was just one thing that I knew that I needed. And it would have come in handy. So yeah, it's basically just, it saves time from needing to keep the edges of things neat and tidy. And it just helps you, it just, for me anyway, it helps the whole process go a lot faster in the long run. It's an investment of time, really. Now, again, this early I can see a spot that I missed. I hope I didn't, I don't think I forgot it. No, I eventually get it. Okay, that's good. So yeah, I've started to settle into an approach as far as how I work from doing these videos, which is nice, but I'm still quite a bit flexible, and I do want to there we go, there now I feel it. I do want to make sure that I try out much more stuff as I go. I just want everything to look kind of like consistent and everything. It would be good. But in this case, I tried out just a lot of simplification and sort of streamlining things, or with as few parts as possible. What was it? I can't remember what I was going to say. But in this case, oh yeah. Oh wait, no. Okay. Anyway, I mean, this piece did end up taking about 8.5 hours. Even though I was trying to do stuff that would save me time. I think it probably would have taken me a lot longer if I didn't. So I've got the figure drawn out all on one layer, as you saw. And then in this case, I decided to try out, I forced myself, it was really uncomfortable, but I forced myself to do all of this occlusion on one layer altogether. I've sort of teased at it a bit in the past. I've tried it out in some places and then given up, but this time I wanted to just really try it out and see how it would work. So basically what I'm just doing is on a single layer with just black, I'm just going through and putting in black where on the objects there would be light, or wherever photons are not shooting towards my eyeballs. That's basically what occlusion is. It could be called rendering. This is basically just general lighting and shading, if you were to call it shading. I don't know. Shading is sort of a whatever. Yeah, just putting it in. And if you're trying this out, the two little bits of advice that I would give you are put the shadows where you know they're going to be first. That's where you would start off, and then just start light and go dark if you're not sure. Just put something somewhere, and if you see that it's wrong, then you can fix it. But yeah, just start where you know they're going to go, and then just start light. One thing that actually helps me out quite a lot if I'm not sure where something needs to be, it's something I learned listening to Adam Carolla. He was talking about cars, and someone asked, or someone was wondering, it might have been him, about like why a race car has the big wheels in the front and the little wheels in the big wheels in the back and the little wheels in the front. And his example is just switch them around. Or no, somebody couldn't remember where they went or something. Anyway, he said flip them around and see how it looks. And then once he did that, you just realize, okay, this looks completely wrong. Now I see why things are the other way. So it's nice to just, if you're not sure which is the right way to go, try it the other way, and you'll see why the right way is the right way. Just from trial and error. There's one thing on this design. He is I believe it's a space drake is the race. Yeah, but he does breathe fire. And I did something on the side of his head there that I did when I redesigned the High Dragons for Dragon Age series in Dragon Age Inquisition. The For dragons, it's like you always want to like come up with your own like new sort of take on them, or like add like plant your flag somewhere. And the one thing I did is I got rid of nostrils and I put on these vents on the sides of the snout. And it's something that I liked, and I just want to do it whenever I draw dragons, basically, from here on out. Where rather than having these tiny little nostrils, proportionally, which would just get like the friction of the air going through those tiny little like nostrils would just absolutely like just ruin, like it would just burn up. So I wanted the dragon to have a better air intake that would allow them to take in more air more quickly without with less resistance. And so those are sort of they're basically just gills that kind of open up and stoke whatever sort of flame system is going on inside. I mean, you could just make dragon nostrils bigger, but I think that looks really bad on dragons, like when they have big kind of pig noses, sort of like I mean, a lot of like the older drawings of like black dragons from the D&D lore are sort of like that, and it just looks silly. It just doesn't work into me anymore. But so I thought that would be sort of a handy sort of way to design a dragon. In the gameplay sense, it was kind of cool because it also like when a dragon would then like inhale when like fire was going to be coming, it would be like a visual cue as well, like you could see them glowing, and it was, I don't know, anyway, it's just so yeah, that's why he's got those slits on the side of his nose there. It's sort of they're my little change to the dragon design. I don't know if anybody's done it before, but yeah, so that's my little idea. So this quiver here down in front in his crotch there, it holds just metal rods that he grabs them up and uses his fire to heat them up red hot and throws them like little javelins. Which I thought was really awesome. The fact that like his he would actually use his fire that way in combat, I thought was really interesting and cool. Another thing that Justin pointed out in his description that I thought was a really kind of brilliant call on his part was that glass blowing and glass work is something that's popular amongst this race, where because everybody can just create fire out of their face, that they would do a lot of things that involve heat, and that would definitely be glass. And so he's got a bunch of little glass beads and everywhere in his armor that I add like way later on, but I just wanted to give a big thumbs up to Justin for his call on that. It's really smart. The glass is actually pretty heavy. So you don't want to have too much, but yeah, it's good. So in the case of this, if you know, like, the legs are often going to be some of the darkest parts of a character, and so just sort of using the gray or the tone as just a wash in large areas where you can sort of start from there. Like it can be really intimidating to have no tone and then to add it and then remove it and sort of try to figure it out all from scratch, because it can be hard to go from like zero tone to the full shaded value of something that's going to be on there. It can be a lot easier to start with sort of like a mid to mid dark kind of general tone somewhere, and then push and pull that wherever you go. It's similar to something that you might have seen somewhere where people do life drawing with toned paper where it's already kind of gray or like a light brown, and they'll have like white conte and black conte, and they'll add white to highlight it and add darkness to lighten it, and it can be quite a nice look. It's usually around like between 30 and 60 to or not 60, but like between 30 and 50% gray, kind of like really like mid-range tone, and that can be it can alleviate a lot of the pressure. So one thing that took a lot of getting used to with this approach of rendering it out like this was it was kind of stressful to be spending so long on one stage, and working on this for however long it's been at this point, and it still looks this unfinished because there's no color anywhere, and what am I going to do? I'm running out of time, and I got to get this done. But the thing is, it's kind of nice is that after coloring, there isn't as much rendering that needs to get done. So just getting used to the time management was a bit of a challenge. Mostly a challenge in the sense of like stick to it, have faith it'll work, rather than just abandoning ship and then going off and doing it how I've always done it, because that's a good way to not learn anything. I've often said that I want people to see me make mistakes. That's super important to me. Just to see like when I mess something up or I do something poorly and then needing to redo it. I think there's a lot to learn from, or some of the most important stuff is to learn to not be afraid of mistakes, and especially to not be afraid to correct mistakes. I think with that mentality in mind, that's kind of what helped me to keep with it, even though this is getting really kind of freaked me out for a while. But I mean, as is the common theme, it's always a challenge, and it's to be expected. If I'm not being challenged, then I'll probably be bored. And actually, that happens quite a lot, even in my sketching. Like after a while, it's like, why do I want to bother drawing one of those things again? What's the point if I'm just, it's just, if you draw the same sort of stuff too often, it gets to the point where you just kind of wonder, what am I doing? Is that it? So it's good to keep things moving. I was trying to find it there, but I eventually found the means to turn off the, what's it called? Like the ring sampler. It's that big kind of white circle, or that circle and the thing that pops up whenever I do when I use my color picker. I just wanted to turn that off. My videos are already jittery enough as they are, and I wanted to make it a little bit less harsh with that thing keeping on popping up a lot. So I got rid of it. And plus, it's not really that useful to me anymore. I do really like it. I think it looks good and it can be useful, but I've just been doing this for so long now that I don't think I need it. The same with like basically everything else in Photoshop. Like I'm constantly trying to pare things down to only what I actually use, because if something comes up and I need to change like the text justification on something, I don't mind going up to window and opening up the paragraph window and then doing it because that comes up once a month maybe or less, and so I'm trying to just get like kind of yours is going to be different than mine if you do this too, but just the ultimate pared down version of Photoshop. And I'm trying to get things as simple as I can, and so that's another reason why I wanted to do it. I just don't need it anymore. If I accidentally pick the wrong color and start painting, I'll just hit undo and get the right one. It's not so bad. And plus, with the way that I work now with layers, the way I do with every layer being one color and just masking it, is that I'm only just picking the gray tones on the masking layer. So I don't have to worry about like, did I pick the color here that was a bit too red? Did I pick the one that was a bit too orange or a bit too green? It's all just working on one color, so it's just the value or the intensity. And even if I get it a little wrong, I can just do a lot with my own pressure sensitivity. So yeah, I like simple Photoshop. Definitely not a requirement though, but I recommend it. See, I wanted to make sure that I had some light coming through the membranes. So I started off with everything sort of being opaque, and I think that's useful. I've never actually thought about it before, but it seems like just kind of like something obvious to do, where you just sort of treat it almost like it's just made of one solid. Like even like marble would be too transparent. But imagine something that no light can go through. Because I think just the volume and the body of something is one of the most critical. I mean, in all art that you're doing like this is like absolutely critical. I mean, everything should have correct volume, but also if you're working in something like that has a bit more of a pipeline, like it's something that's going to be passed on to a 3D modeler, you need to have as few margins for error as possible. It needs to communicate as much to the final object as you can. So making sure that something has the proper volume in your drawing is a critical skill, I would say. It's very crucial. Something that I'm always trying to work on. It's tough. It's hard. But it's rewarding. So yeah, those jack chains with it's all segmented. I actually saw a little video the other day of one of my new helpers sent me a video about a guy who was showing off different weapon capabilities and everything. He's got this whole YouTube channel, and he had a good video where he showed, like, I don't know if it was about it, but it might have just been a clip from it, so I don't know if I could find it, but the difference between using a straight, like a smooth blade and a serrated blade for like a slashing attack, and they work quite differently. Or yeah, like the smooth blade actually cut quite a lot deeper, even though I would have thought that the serrated blade would have been quite a bit nastier. I think it was actually a video about fantasy blades and why they're ridiculous sometimes. But I wanted serrated, or sort of like the spiky stuff here, for this guy. Just it would be. I mean, it helps with the silhouette. It sort of makes more sense why they're there. I think if they were smooth edge stuff, it would just look like armor, and it wouldn't be as interesting. So it makes it look a bit more designed and involved. But also with having the spikes, you can do quite a lot of damage with them. But also, if he's using them to sort of block swords, I could see it being beneficial to kind of have somebody's sword sort of lock somewhere a little bit, and I think it would be a bit more controlled than if it was smooth. Maybe that's sort of my thinking. Especially with the membranes. I mean, skin membranes like this actually heal quite quickly. Like when bats get tears on their wings, they're actually not really like screwed over or anything. They actually heal up pretty good. But you wouldn't. I mean, this guy definitely wouldn't want his wings getting poked. So anything that could help give him that extra control in that area, I thought would be good. So this took a lot of figuring, was adding the color in. I wanted each color to be on its own thing. I mean, you can see in this video, I try out so many different things. I play with different layers. I really don't like the look of colorized film. I think it just always looks horrible. And I really always have a hard time colorizing stuff and making it work out. Like working this way, where you start off with the rendered form and then adding the color on top of it. It can be really, really tough and tricky. So you can see a lot of like figuring out different layer modes and different opacities and different stackings and curves and trying out different stuff and whatever works. And I actually don't even remember what I ended up settling with, but I was happy with the end results. It's kind of nice to just keep things as simple as this. Especially with a character who has a described color scheme that's quite simple, where it's red and gold. It's sort of like more like the cultural kind of color scheme that he's got here. So yeah, making sure I want to keep all the things of one color on one layer, which is easy because the color is just one whole layer by itself. It's actually, I think it's people would probably kind of get a bit nervous by thinking about having like fewer colors on a character, but it's actually, I would highly recommend it. Where a character shouldn't really have more than four colors on them, four distinct colors. I mean, you whatever they need, put it in there, but. When you start having too many colors, it just starts looking really messy and noisy and kind of sloppy. And keeping fewer colors on your character, it'll make your character more eye-catching. It'll make it easier to control your eye around the figure if you need to. It can make them more striking. So having like when I first ever started doing this method of coloring with the one color on a layer, I was a little bit nervous about it being restrictive or limiting, but it ended up being quite liberating, and it felt really good. Like it was just nice to be a lot more in control of how the character was going to look. Plus, if you go back and think about all your favorite characters, if you doubt me, go back and look at all your favorite characters and count how many distinct colors there are. And if they have different outfits, then look at which ones that you like most and see which ones have the different sort of color arrangements. So this is when I really started having fun. I rediscovered when I did the last Dragonborn character that scales are super fun to do. It's almost therapeutic or meditative, just relaxing, and it's really enjoyable. It's just one of those things that it feels as if it's really easy to make it look right, or if you just keep putting them in there and they're, as long as they're flowing with the form and sort of tilting away when they're tilting away, and they have the right sort of shape, then with enough practice it's almost easy to get it right. Or I don't know, it's just, I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but it's just one of those things where, I mean, even these scales on the fingers, like they're just blobby little lines, but once you start getting them in there, they really kind of sell the look quite early on. The scales require very little fussing. I love painterly stuff. I love when you can see the strokes. I love when things are just daubs of color. Like my favorite painters are J.C. Leyendecker and Gregory Manchess. And Gregory Manchess in particular, his colors are all just perfectly chosen. His paintings are all just very simple daubs of color, but there seems to be no limit to what he can depict, and it's a really nice. He's a perfect example of how just picking the right color and putting it in the right spot is all you need to get used to doing. You don't need rendering and detail and an extra hours and hours and hours adding stuff. You just need to sell the idea. You just need to make something that people will recognize, and then get out, and that's all you got to do. The viewer's mind will make it real. So you just need to give them the right ingredients, and their brain will bake it up into a nice cake, and it'll make sense to them. If it looks real enough, it will be real enough. So don't worry about getting everything photorealistic and perfect, quote unquote, because even that stuff is kind of boring. At least to me, anyway. I could be wrong. You should just like what you like. But yeah, but I would just recommend just relaxing about putting in too much rendering or detail on stuff. It's what needs to be there and what doesn't, what can go. So he was described as being ruby red, or like a medium dark kind of ruby color. So overall, he's got that general tone, but you really don't want to just leave a character as at one sort of flat color over their body. I know I just went on a rant about limited colors, but if you have a character that's like all green or all red, like you want to include variations on that color that dip into other parts of the color spectrum. So in this case, with the red character, it's good to have things that go a little bit more orange yellow, maybe pink, things that go a little bit purple, wherever. Like a good place to focus on putting that stuff is skin that is thick and skin that is thin. So in this case, like the skin that would be thick would be the scales, and so there's just a lot more pigment, and it's a different sort of material. It's denser. It should be a bit darker. And then the softer, lighter skin is just like the thinner. Excuse me. I knew the yawns would finally come. They would finally catch me. And they did. So anyway, yeah, just having different colors for different types of skin is really important to keep track of. Even like if you're painting a face, you never just have like a skin tone wall of color and then put some eyes on it. It's like there's you gotta think about like the blood under the skin and the cheeks and the lips and under the eyes, and do they have 5 o'clock shadow, and that's gonna make like gray around their face, and where does that collect? And even though it's just skin, there's so much variation on just skin. Since this guy is technically royalty from where he's from, I just went with the standard sort of purple kind of color. Purple is it's sort of, you've probably heard it before, but it's like the royal color. This goes way back, past like, even like, it's, I don't want to say it's longer than 2,000 years. Maybe, it could be. I could see it being. I can't remember how long ago, but way back in like ancient Roman days, they would dye, like the upper class would dye their togas with purple, and they would have dark purple togas, richly pigmented, very dark. And it was the reason they did that is because it was expensive. The reason it was expensive is because it would come from the pigment came from a type of mollusk or some sort of clam type animal, and I don't remember how many shells it took to get one drop of pigment. I think it was like it's an absolutely ridiculous number. It's like hundreds or thousands of these shells for one drop of pigment, and so it was very labor intensive, and so it was very expensive. And so when they could afford it, they would, and then everybody, if you had that purple outfit, they would know that you were royalty. It's just, even back then, it seems like character design. Anyway, so that's why, and then that sort of just carried through, and it's always just in Western civilization just being attributed to that. And I mean, it doesn't mean that really now anymore, because it seems like color's just free. But it's just one of those lingering iconic things. And so that anyway, that's why purple is the royal color. So I just wanted to call on that for this. Adding some more holes to the armor. Needed to lighten them up a bit. It also kind of helps make things look a bit fancier, which is nice, which is good for him. And the good thing about having limited and controlled and labeled layers is that doing that sort of thing isn't difficult anymore. It's actually kind of fun. Like carving those holes into that raised arm, the guard on the raised arm there, it's just you add the tone and then you remove the color and then you put in the right colors, and it's that easy. I always recommend the obvious advice of naming your layers and using as few of them as you can. Even when I work, you might have noticed sometimes I'll duplicate the image and resave it as as the B or C or D version. This is just me working through, and I'm actually sort of cheating. Is this lying? Am I lying? Maybe. But I just I'll work something up to a point, and then I'll be kind of happy with it. But I want to merge the layers, but I don't want to risk losing them forever. So I make a duplicate next step, and then I merge the layers I wanted to merge, and then I work from there. So I'll always have the information that went into the layers before in case I totally wreck something. It's probably overkill for anybody to do it, but because everything can always be fixed. But that's one of the ways that helps me keep things simple and consolidated and sort of straightforward and easy. Even in the future, like never flatten your original file. I mean, do whatever you want at home, but if you're ever working somewhere, never do that because you never know, like in a week or a year or a month, even if you think something's done, it's probably going to be, the risk of it being brought up is always there, and it's really nice to just go back into something and look at the layers, and they're all labeled, and it's like, okay, can you we're doing some publishing, can you redo this, or like change the color of that and move it up. It's just like rather than spending 2 days on something, you can spend 20 minutes on something. It's always worth it. So now I get to go back and work on the scales even more, which is so fun, and just adding some lightness between them just helps make them a bit, that's kind of what they're like. It looks better, and it makes them stand out a bit more. It's more accurate. This is just all the worst part. It's just all the rendering and finessing and finagling and going in and just tweaking all the little stuff. It takes the most time, but it's got to be done. Just wanted some subsurface scattering. As the light goes through the skin, you see this sort of thing in somebody's ears when the light is behind them. It can be overdone. If you overdo subsurface scattering, it can make things look like they're made out of Sculpey or like a silicone model, like in a movie, like props effects store or effects makeup. The silicone can catch too much light and make it not look like skin anymore, and the jig is up. So subsurface scattering is it's when the light goes into the skin, so it's under the surface, so it's subsurface, and then it bounces around in there, and then comes out, so it's been scattered. It goes below the surface and gets scattered and mixed up, and then comes back out a lot more pink and orangey, and that's what subsurface scattering is. And then he's got a little bit of some hot fire going on in his inside of his mouth and in his snout there. Now I gotta add the weapons. The weaponry stuff. Say lots of just tedious things here, getting things nice and ready. I wanted to make sure that I was getting the position of the pull right with how I had originally sketched it. So that's me going back. Actually, yeah, I forgot that I did that. I went back and I brought up the original drawing where I had the line art still. So I didn't have the line art in the version I was painting on, so I went back and got it. So I was right. I was right all along. It came in handy. Um, that was nice. So yeah, I just wanted to see how that was, and then realized that I could tweak it a little bit and make it a bit more interesting without breaking the hand how I had painted it. And then this weapon is based on, it's pretty similar to Justin's description, at least as close as I could get it. It actually took me about 2 minutes of kind of rereading his 1 sentence or 2 sentence description with the doodle. It was tough to, I didn't think I got it, but I think I got it. I hope I got it. For the most part, I got it. And then yeah, these are the rods that he'll heat up and throw down. I figured it'd be a good place to put a quiver on him, just because he uses them mostly when he's up in the air. So it would be sort of a bad idea, I think, to have anything kind of on his back. And so if he's just flapping around, that's probably there's nothing really going wrong there. You know, he could it's easy to reach. It's not going to interrupt his flapping or anything. And his legs are, for the most part, just hanging down there anyway, so it's a good place for a quiver. And then this part was just just tedious and took a lot of time just to draw these weapons. And I wasn't concerned with their designs or anything. The only thing I wanted to make sure was that they all look different from each other. He is a conqueror. He is a good guy. He does fight for good, but he does conquer a bunch of bad guys. And he uses their weapons as trophies on this cape that he wears when he goes through town. I just wanted to make sure that they all looked distinct from each other, and all kind of had like a bit of an evil, kind of pointy kind of look to them. But I wasn't too concerned of too much detail on them. I just needed just enough to kind of make it clear that they were swords or weapons hanging off of them. Another good reason to have his cape designed the way it does, because if it was like a human cape down his back, these things would be slicing up his wings really badly if he ever took off with them. So it's important to have them kind of hang down and sort of follow his direction rather than interrupt his wings. He's got his culture and their emblem or sacred symbol is the triangle, and so he's got these magic, and he had these rune stones around his belt, and so that's what those triangular things with the patterns on them are. The markings on them, they're runes. I figured writing style. I figured something like these guys would have. They would use their claws quite a bit, and so all the symbols on those rune stones are shapes that sort of long talons, like what they've got, would make if they just pressed them into a mold or into clay at different angles, and then that would be their writing style. And then they would pour the gold, or they would make a negative mold and then pour the gold in there, and that's how they would make that stuff. So that's them. Just quick little writing style. It's like cuneiform. It's like cuneiform, which is like the oldest form of writing. It's from Mesopotamia. You'd recognize it if you saw it, probably. But I found out my coworker had a medical textbook about the naming conventions of all human anatomy, and a part that had cuneiform in it, and I didn't know what it meant, and then he told me that the cuneiform, or the cunea, or what, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was the fingernail, and so that's where that comes from. It's fingernail writings, just putting things into the clay with your fingernail and writing that way. It's pretty cool, pretty neat stuff. Etymology is one of my favorite things in the whole world. So yeah, with the staff, nice and simple. I wanted it to just look like red, polished, well kept wood, sort of like really, really highly polished, like Chinese furniture, or has that like black wood, it's super glossy. But in this case, I want it to be red because His culture really likes red. Yeah, lots of rendering and stuff. I didn't want to, yeah, didn't want to spend too much time on this stuff. Just, does it look like metal? Does it look like swords? You don't want to take away too much attention from Shinok. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My brain was really warm. I need when I was just trying to go through all my memory banks, thinking about different sword shapes and what would work. And long story short, I was just dreading this part. Hey, this is actually from Justin's description, is that they're held on with rings, with gold rings. Yeah, I really didn't want to draw the cape, but I thought that he would have wanted to have seen it, and so I felt obligated to put it in there. So yeah, nice, just extra little like kind of triangle motifs, pointy stuff. Stylistically added in there though. Yeah, lots of finessing and adding things in. Rendering. You can be doing a lot of rendering if you're doing this for a living. But it can be a lot of fun. And like even this stuff, like I want to just draw like a giant dragon now, just covered in scales. Just render out the scales, take my time, do it in layers, build it up, organize my my method of attack, and just execute it. That'd be a lot of fun. Not really sure what else to say. I mean, I'm just sort of rendering things out, adding little details here. Basically, if you're rendering stuff out and you don't know where to put it, you can even just think about what doesn't make sense. I mean, that might be too vague, but if you just attack what doesn't make sense or what's not clear enough, or if you see something that is sort of getting lost in something else, just clarify it. It's all just clarification. That's all this rendering is for. That's all you ever need it for. That's why we do it. It's just to help sort of show off the shape of something and what's in front of what is basically all it's for. So if there's ever anything that you think just someone will get confused about if they look at it, work on that. Just go and find those spots, and that's what you're doing there. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to do with this magic orb here, so I just kept working on it, came up with sort of something. I wanted it to look a bit more chaotic and sort of active, so I added these sort of orbiting nobules of I guess it'd be some sort of energy. Yeah, I just wanted to make this look not too muddy. So this would be another example where it just looked like a sort of a big messy, like a tornado. So I wanted to go in and add some underlighting, not only because the underlighting would probably be there, but it sort of helped show off some of the shapes and forms and everything there a bit better. Oftentimes, I'll tend to finish things up with a layer on top of everything that's basically just painting over stuff. Having a highly structured thing can sometimes be a little bit restraining in that sort of order, and you might need to go over and paint over stuff a bit, and that's fine. So yeah, this is Shinok the warrior, or not the warrior, the crucible for Justin. I actually know Justin. He's a personal friend of mine. He lives in Calgary, which is my hometown, which is far away. But I decided he won fair and square. And it was by random selection, so I would do it anyway. I felt a little bit weird about it because I know him, and I was like, is this still fair? And I realized it's always fair if it's random selection. And he's actually hired me to do some D&D art for him years ago. So anyway, I was happy that he could have won. It was a sort of another neat challenge to do this for a friend. It was really good. So anyway, follow me on R&D Fantasy every Monday. Free lottery, character art lottery, R&D Fantasy on Twitter. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope it helped.